I'm going to say something controversial. The first generation Mini Cooper SE was one of my favourite electric vehicles, and to be completely honest, it still is. Yes, I know it borrowed pieces from the BMW i3, and yes, I know its range was limited to about 200 kilometres in the real world, and yes, I know it was very expensive, but it did one thing absolutely perfectly. At its heart, it was quintessentially a Mini. But now, there's this. This is the Mini Countryman SE, and it's one of two pure electric vehicles Mini has introduced at the same time. And this car promises to address all of those small problems you may have had with Mini's first electric vehicle.
Chasing cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, before I go anywhere in the Mini Countryman SE, I want to take some time to have a look at the interior at a standstill so I can give it my full attention, because it is one of the best interiors I've sat in a new car in a long time. Now, when I first saw this car, if you remember, I saw it at the Munich Motor Show where it was revealed. And honestly, I thought it was still some kind of concept, because the interior and the exterior is so wild, it couldn't possibly make it through to production, could it? Well, it did. Look at this. It's absolutely amazing. And once again, perfectly Mini. Let's start with some of the materials. We've got an all vegan interior here. So this is not leather. It's sort of a vinyl, Mini's own vinyl take, and it feels supple, wonderful, probably better than leather in the long term. And then there's this wonderful knitted textile on the dashboard and door cards. That is made from recycled materials. And it's got this wonderful fade effect where it goes from this petrol color, is what it's called by Mini, into a sort of bronzy brown back here. I've got other lovely materials covering the tops of the dash here. It's got a really good quality feel, and it feels perfectly Mini once again. The real centerpiece, though, quite literally, is this central touch screen. When was the last time you saw a perfectly round touchscreen in a car? I'll save you the trouble. Never. It's 240 millimeters in diameter, and it is part of Mini's new operating system 9. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful to use. The graphics are excellent. It's really easy to navigate, very intuitive. It works a lot like a smartphone, only a circular smartphone. I particularly like it's got Mini's drive experiences, which are a series of different themes. That's the go-kart theme, someone cheering in the background. I've also got another of my favorite, the timeless theme. And that changes the graphics and the way the car behaves and feels. Go-kart obviously is for more sporty driving, aka sport in other vehicles. Timeless is a more traditional look. There's a green mode, and it honestly is a wonderful, wonderful effect. I've also got Mini's smartphone application, which allows me to lock and unlock the vehicle without using any kind of conventional key at all. And it also allows me to see some of the vital statistics of the vehicle when I'm nowhere near it. I also particularly love the toggle switches. It's kind of hark back to the retro previous Minis. And that's really what that central screen is all about. You remember the very first of the BMW Minis had a huge speedometer in the middle there, apart from the Cooper S, which had two separate dials. And that's a way of pointing back at Mini's past whilst having a really good forward-looking future. This, of course, is an all-electric Mini. Speaking of which, this is the all-wheel drive, the high-performance version, and that's why I've come all the way to Portugal to find out exactly what this thing drives like. Now, as this is the performance halo of the Countryman electric for now, it means I get two electric motors for all-wheel drive, hence the all-4, and a lot of power. 230 kilowatts is the combined power output of those two motors, and nearly 500 newton meters of torque. And I can say that makes this newest Mini rather exciting. But there's a way of making it even more exciting and a little bit more sensational. And it comes back to those driver experiences I talked about before. Now, at the moment, I'm just in a fairly normal mode, but if I flick through into one of my more favorite, the timeless again, there's its little sound. Each time I press the brake or throttle or use regen braking, it makes some interesting noises. It's so weird, but I can't help but love it. What a bizarre sound, but kind of makes sense. And it all works with the throttle and brake, as I say, so it's intuitive and kind of likable. And when you're in timeless, it makes this strange hum when you're at a standstill as well, almost like there's some kind of engine running in the background. But anyway, we're done with that one for now. We're going to go now into my other favorite sound, which is go-kart. Now this is a much more serious driving proposition. And it makes some strange, almost Jetsons type of sounds on overrun and braking. Oh wow, and also I get a little bit more power in this mode as well. Wow! So already it's a big tick when it comes to performance. Acceleration is visceral and really, really addictive. The traction control system is wonderful as well. We've had some really mixed weather today in Portugal, including quite a lot of rain, and absolutely cannot fault the traction and sure-footedness of this car. Now I know I shouldn't compare it to the iX2, but I'm going to because I drove that car just yesterday. And of course, these two cars, the iX2 and the Countryman, share a platform and a lot of mechanicals. But Mini has gone about the tuning of the chassis in a completely different way. And I think the result is probably more successful than the iX2. First of all, the steering seems to be lighter but also more communicative. And also, somehow, the chassis is more comfortable and pliable, but also sporty. So I feel like the teams have it's a win for the Mini when it comes to the ride and handling. Neither car particularly boring at the wheel, but this one absolutely takes the crown when it comes to the most enjoyment in an electric version. Now I'm back down on the coast road. I feel I need a slightly more relaxing version of my drive experiences, and so you find me in balance. In this mode, the ride comfort is maximized, the steering becomes a little bit lighter, and I'm altogether more docile at the wheel. It's also far and away the biggest Mini that has ever been. And you can feel it everywhere. Because the batteries and motors are tucked away in the corners and underneath the car, there is heaps of space, loads of space where a normal transmission tunnel would be. I've got loads of space in the back. I sat out there earlier and it is genuinely surprising how much room there is for people in the second row. And look at all this headroom. I've got room for another me up there. The only thing I'm not particularly mad about is that head-up display. Unlike any of the BMW models, it's actually on its own little screen that feels like a bit of an afterthought. Now, that's because the Mini classic rake of the windscreen doesn't allow the correct angle for a conventional HUD to work. So if it's a trade-off between the look of a Mini and a conventional head-up display projected on the screen, I definitely have the way this thing looks on the outside. And with a 67 kilowatt hour battery, the Mini finally has the range that it deserved as well. Go for this one, the SE, and you'll get about 432 kilometers of range. And if you go for the entry-level single motor version, you'll get about 462 kilometers of range. So pretty respectable. But this one has to be the pick for me. I love the performance of it. It seems to be really uncompromised in the way it delivers it, and you get a 0 to 100 dash in 5.6 seconds. But because we've got nearly 500 Newton meters of torque, it feels more than that. But there's something amusing when you're in balance mode, when you hit the gas or battery pedal, you get this sort of soothing, kind of almost wellness center waiting room feel to it. It's kind of paradoxical in a way, but if you don't like it, change up the drive experience. This car will be available in a number of different configurations and variants. This one is the mid-range favoured. Strange name for a variant, but there you go. There's also an entry-level classic, and there will be later down the line a JCW Sport. More about that later. The entry-level version, single motor, actually starts at about $65,000 in Australia. And this one, with all its performance and a bit of extra kit and this lovely interior I spoke about earlier, will set you back about $78,000. This version is the pick for me. Not only does it get maximum performance and pretty much uncompromised range of still over 400 kilometers, it also gets a mid-spec favoured level of equipment with this lovely interior. This version will set you back about $78,000 in Australia. But the really exciting news is this. There's a more entry-level and affordable version which gets a single motor, slightly less power, increased range, and a starting price of about $65,000. And of course, don't forget, at the same time as the introduction of this car, or roundabouts, we'll get the more traditional 3-door Mini Cooper, which of course Mini is perhaps most famous for. And that means you're now spoilt for choice when it comes to electric Minis. You can either have the Countryman with all its space and practicality, or you can have the more traditional and perhaps enthusiast-focused Mini Cooper 3-door. But when it comes to pricing, that's the really exciting thing, because this thing's around about $78,000, but if you go for the absolute most affordable Mini, you can have range of in excess of 400 kilometers, better performance, and the starting price of around $65,000. So, That means you can have an electric Mini that is around about the same price as the original version, which would only do about 200 kilometers, with boosted range, lowered prices measure for measure, excellent performance, and spoilt for choice. It seems Mini has finally got serious about electric vehicles.